The aroma of my special blend, coffee, brewed by my new husband, Marcus, usually brought comfort. But today, a metallic tang cut through the rich scent, a whisper of dread chilling my veins. As he watched me, that too-wide smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this wasn't just coffee. This was a test. My name is Eleanor Vance, and at 56, I thought I had seen the worst life could throw at me when I lost my beloved husband, Arthur, 2 years ago. We had built Vance Interiors from the ground up, a legacy of beauty and bespoke design that was our shared passion. Arthur's sudden passing had left a gaping hole in my heart, and a mountain of responsibilities on my shoulders. It was during that raw, vulnerable time that Marcus appeared, a beacon of kindness and steady support. He was Arthur's younger brother, always a bit in Arthur's shadow, but after Arthur passed, he stepped up, helping me navigate the legal maze, offering comfort, and slowly, gently, filling a void I thought would forever remain. We married a year later, a quiet ceremony, a promise to face the future together. I believed him when he said he loved me, when he promised to cherish and protect me. Now, as I sat at the polished mahogany table in my own dining room, staring at the steaming mug Marcus had placed before me, my stomach churned with a fear far colder than grief. My sister-in-law, Serafina, Marcus's younger sister, sat opposite us, her perfectly manicured hands clasped around her own untouched mug, her gaze uncomfortably fixed on me. Serafina, a self-proclaimed lifestyle guru with a penchant for expensive scarves and thinly veiled condescension, had always had a competitive edge with me, even before Marcus and I were together. She ran a niche event planning business, often clashing with my design aesthetic, subtly implying my style was dated. Today, however, her usual sharp demeanor was softened by an almost predatory gleam. "Don't you want to try the coffee, honey?" Marcus asked, his voice smooth, but the words felt like tiny, sharp needles. "I made it just for you. Your special blend." My special blend. He had started making it a few months ago, a rich, dark roast he'd spent weeks perfecting, he claimed. It had become our morning ritual. But a month ago, the ritual had changed. That metallic aftertaste had begun to emerge, subtle at first, then growing more distinct. And with it, a creeping wave of debilitating fatigue, migraines that felt like ice picks behind my eyes, and a fog that often descended, stealing my thoughts, blurring my memories. "Oh, Eleanor, you look a little peaky, dear," Serafina chimed in, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Perhaps you're overdoing it with that new client. The Maxwell estate is quite the undertaking, even for someone in their prime." Her words hit their mark. The Maxwell estate was a coveted project, a sprawling historic mansion that would solidify Vance Interiors' reputation and secure my financial future for years to come. It was the kind of legacy project Arthur had dreamed of. The kind of project Serafina often hinted she could have managed, if only she had the right connections. I forced a smile, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for the mug. "Nonsense, Serafina. I'm perfectly fine. Just a little, pre-presentation jitters." My presentation for the Maxwells was in 3 hours, the culmination of months of meticulous planning and design. I couldn't afford to be anything less than sharp, but I wasn't fine. The migraines had been relentless this past week. Yesterday, I'd nearly forgotten a crucial detail for the Maxwell presentation, something I'd never done in my 30-plus years as a designer. Marcus and Serafina had been quick to attribute it to stress, to my age, to my lingering grief. "You're just not as sharp as you used to be, darling," Marcus had sighed, gently. "Maybe it's time to slow down." And Serafina had added, "Perhaps a break would do you good, Eleanor. You know, let Marcus take care of things. He's so good with finances, isn't he?" Their words had chipped away at my confidence, making me question my own abilities, my own sanity. But my intuition, that quiet, insistent voice deep within me, refused to be silenced. It had whispered warnings after the first incident, a sudden, inexplicable bout of dizziness during a crucial client meeting, causing me to miss a key point. Then came the persistent nausea after a family dinner that Marcus and Serafina had hosted. Each time, they had a plausible explanation: a bad oyster, a touch of the flu, the stress of running the business alone. but the pattern was too consistent, too convenient. Always when a major professional opportunity arose, or when I was feeling particularly vulnerable. My gaze flickered to the mug. The metallic scent was stronger today, almost acrid. It reminded me, chillingly, of a time 6 months ago when I'd ended up in the emergency room with severe stomach cramps and a racing heart after enjoying what Marcus had proudly called his wellness smoothie. The doctors couldn't find a definitive cause, labeling it an unknown gastrointestinal upset. Marcus had been there, holding my hand, his face a mask of concern, while Serafina had clucked sympathetically about my fragile constitution. I pretended to lift the mug, my eyes scanning their faces. Marcus was watching me, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his jaw. Serafina, however, was a statue of watchful expectation, a tiny, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. A cold wave of certainty washed over me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't even subtle anymore. This was a deliberate act, and I was their target. My mind raced, recalling the hushed conversations I'd overheard, abruptly silenced when I entered the room. The strange texts I'd glimpsed on Marcus's phone, "Is it enough yet?" and "She needs to be indisposed for the Maxwells." The Maxwells, my biggest project to date. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. The sudden burst of inspiration, born of fear and adrenaline, struck me. "Oh, goodness!" I exclaimed, feigning surprise as I checked my phone. "It's already 8:30. I completely forgot about my early morning call with Mr. Henderson from the Maxwell team. I need absolute quiet. Serafina, dear, would you mind if I just ducked into your study for a moment? It's so much quieter than the office downstairs." Serafina's eyes widened, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face, but she quickly recovered. "Of course, Eleanor. Just try not to disturb anything." Her tone was sharp, but I ignored it. I rose abruptly, making a show of gathering my papers. As I walked past Serafina's side of the table, my foot caught on the leg of her chair. "Oh, my word!" I cried out, grabbing the table to steady myself. In the ensuing flurry of apologies and exaggerated clumsiness, my hand swiftly reached out, swapping my coffee mug with Serafina's. The switch was seamless, practiced in my mind 1,000 times over the past few days. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror and exhilaration. "I am so sorry," I gasped, straightening up, my cheeks flushed. I am such a klutz sometimes, especially when I'm distracted. Serafina waved off my apology with a tight, almost forced smile. "It's quite all right, Eleanor. Just, be careful in there, won't you?" I nodded, hurrying towards the study, my pulse roaring in my ears. As I closed the heavy oak door, leaving it slightly ajar, I could still see them at the table. Now, I just had to wait. And watch. From the crack in the doorway, I watched, my breath held captive in my chest. Serafina, oblivious, lifted the coffee cup to her lips. My stomach clenched with a sickening mix of dread and a desperate need for truth. Part of me, the part that still clung to the idea of family, wanted to burst out, to scream a warning. But another, colder part, the part that had endured months of unexplained illness, of gaslighting, of subtle sabotage, knew I needed to see this through. I needed undeniable proof. I'd spent too many nights racked with pain, too many hours doubting my own mind, always after sharing meals or drinks prepared by them. It hadn't always been like this. When Arthur and I first welcomed Marcus and Serafina into our lives, they seemed genuinely fond of us. Serafina, though always a little competitive, had initially been eager to learn from my design expertise. Marcus, quiet and seemingly unassuming, had been a charming presence, always ready with a kind word. But after Arthur's passing, a subtle shift occurred. They became almost too helpful, too present. Marcus's support gradually morphed into a subtle undermining of my decisions, while Serafina's competitive streak sharpened into overt envy. The incident started small. A forgotten appointment here, a sudden dizzy spell during a client presentation there. Marcus always had an excuse ready. "You're still grieving, love," he'd say. "It's natural to be a little scattered." Or Serafina would chime in, "Perhaps you're not getting enough rest, Eleanor." Design work is so demanding at our age, isn't it? The worst was just 2 months ago, right before a major bid for a new luxury boutique hotel. I had ended up hospitalized after drinking what Marcus called his invigorating morning tonic. The doctors found traces of something in my system they couldn't quite identify, but Marcus, with his calm demeanor, convinced everyone it was likely a reaction to some supplement I was taking or just an unusually severe viral infection. I had barely recovered in time for the bid, and even then, my performance was subpar, leading us to lose the contract. I gripped the doorframe, my knuckles white. From the dining room, I saw Serafina take another sip of the coffee. Marcus was typing on his phone, seemingly unconcerned, but I noticed the subtle clench of his jaw, the way his eyes darted nervously towards Serafina. My own untouched cup sat cold on the table where I'd left it, the metallic smell still lingering in my nose, making me shudder. Then, a slight tremor in Serafina's hand caught my attention. She set down the cup, her face suddenly pale, a faint sheen of sweat appearing on her forehead. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper, a tremor running through it. Something's not right." Marcus looked up, his expression shifting from feigned nonchalance to a horrifying realization. His eyes, wide with panic, locked onto the cup in Serafina's hand. He jumped up, knocking over his chair with a deafening clatter. "Serafina! What's happening?" Serafina's hands were trembling violently now. She clutched her stomach, her breath coming in ragged gasps. I don't. I feel." She tried to stand but stumbled, grabbing the edge of the table for support, her face contorting in pain. "Marcus! What did you put in that coffee?" I stepped out of the study, my backup phone already recording, my hand steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Marcus was beside Serafina now, his face ashen, panic etched deeply into every line. "That wasn't supposed to be your cup," he whispered, his voice cracking, but in the dreadful silence of the dining room, his words carried clearly, piercing the air like a knife. Serafina's eyes widened, first with comprehension, then with raw, visceral fear. "No," she gasped, sliding to the floor, her body beginning to convulse. "Call an ambulance. Please, I can't breathe." I dialed 911 immediately, my voice surprisingly steady. Serafina was on the floor now, her body racked with violent tremors, gasping for air. Marcus knelt beside her, his face a mask of abject horror, realizing their carefully constructed plan had backfired spectacularly, trapping the wrong victim. "Emergency services, yes, we need an ambulance at 2571 Willow Creek Drive," I stated clearly, keeping my phone recording with my other hand. "My sister-in-law appears to be having a severe reaction to something in her coffee. She's conscious but experiencing extreme tremors and difficulty breathing." As I spoke to the dispatcher, Serafina's eyes, clouded with pain and confusion, locked onto mine. The usual cold calculation in her gaze was replaced by raw terror, then a dawning, terrible understanding. "Eleanor," she choked out, her voice raspy, you switched them. You knew." "Ma'am, the ambulance is on its way," the dispatcher assured me. "Please stay on the line." Marcus was growing more frantic by the second, his voice rising to a near shriek. "Serafina, what's happening? That wasn't supposed to. I mean, it wasn't meant for." "Shut up, Marcus." Serafina snapped through gritted teeth, her anger momentarily overcoming her distress. "This is all your fault. You said it would just make her sick enough to miss the Maxwell presentation next week. You promised it wouldn't be traced." My blood ran cold, a glacial wave of revelation washing over me. The Maxwell presentation. The one that would secure Vance Interior's future. The same project Serafina had been subtly trying to undermine, suggesting my firm was too old-fashioned. "The wellness smoothie last month," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my hands shook with controlled fury. "And the invigorating tonic 2 months ago that cost us the hotel bid. Those weren't accidents, were they?" Serafina's face contorted with another wave of pain, her body writhing. "The tonic, that was supposed to keep you home, make you look unreliable for the hotel presentation. But you still pushed through. She clutched her stomach, doubling over. Marcus said, he said we just needed to discredit you, make clients think you were losing your edge. The wail of sirens filled the air outside, growing rapidly louder. Marcus stood up, backing away from both of us, his face bleached white. Serafina, stop talking. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Serafina spat, her words slurring slightly. We've been planning this for months. Ever since Arthur died, and Eleanor insisted on keeping Vance Interiors running, and you just kept getting stronger. You were supposed to make sure she drank it today. Paramedics burst through the front door, their faces grim, their movements efficient. I quickly stepped aside to let them work. As they loaded Serafina onto a stretcher, I stopped recording and instantly sent the video to my private email, then forwarded it to my attorney, Ms. Davies. Marcus stood frozen, watching as his carefully constructed facade crumbled around him, piece by agonizing piece. I'll ride with her to the hospital, I told the paramedics, my voice firm, betraying none of the turmoil within. After all, I need to make sure my sister-in-law gets the proper treatment. I met Marcus's terrified gaze, my eyes cold and unwavering. And I'm sure the doctors will be very interested in knowing exactly what was in that coffee. The emergency room at Nashville General Hospital was a flurry of activity as doctors rushed to treat Serafina. I sat in the waiting room, my phone clutched in my hand, replaying the recording of Serafina's confession, the tremors in her voice, the raw panic in her eyes. It was all the evidence I needed to prove this wasn't just paranoia on my part, not just my grief-addled mind playing tricks. Family of Serafina Davies, a nurse called out. I stood up, noting Marcus's conspicuous absence. He'd mumbled something about parking the car 20 minutes ago and hadn't returned. I'm her sister-in-law, I said, following the nurse through the double doors. How is she? She's stabilized, but we found concerning levels of toxins in her system. The nurse's expression was grave. The doctor would like to speak with you about some unusual findings in her blood work. Dr. Phillips, a tall woman with silvering hair and sharp, intelligent eyes, was waiting by Serafina's room. Mrs. Vance, she began, her voice calm and professional. Could you tell me exactly what happened before your sister-in-law became ill? I took a deep breath, pulling out my phone. I think you should listen to this first, doctor. I played the recording from brunch, watching the doctor's expression change from professional concern to alarm, then to a steely resolve. This is very serious, she said, making notes on her tablet. The substance we found isn't something that accidentally ends up in coffee. We're looking at deliberate contamination. Just then, Marcus appeared at the end of the hallway, his face pale and sweaty. He'd clearly overheard the doctor's words. Eleanor, he started, taking a shaky step toward me. Let me explain. Serafina was confused, she didn't know what she was saying. Stay back, Dr. Phillips warned, pressing the nurse's call button. Security to room 412, please. Marcus raised his hands in surrender, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. This is all a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help Eleanor. She was so stressed after Arthur passed, she needed to slow down. Really? I pulled up the texts I'd discovered on his phone last week, the ones I'd secretly forwarded to myself as my suspicions grew. So, these messages between you and Serafina about making sure she's out of commission before the Maxwell presentation and upping the dosage were just friendly conversation about my stress? His face drained of all color. You went through my phone? After I started getting sick every time I spent time with you, I retorted, my voice unwavering. Doctor, I turned to Dr. Phillips, I've been hospitalized 3 times in the past 6 months with unexplained symptoms. I'd like to know if they match what you found in Serafina's system today. The doctor's eyes narrowed. We'll need to run some comparative tests. Security will make sure your husband remains available for questioning. 2 security guards appeared, positioning themselves on either side of Marcus. He looked trapped, his deceit exposed. Serafina and I, he stammered, we were just trying to protect you. You were working too hard, taking on all the big clients, running yourself into the ground. Serafina said if we could just make you take some time off, by poisoning me? My voice was steady, though my hands shook with rage. How long have you been doing this, Marcus? Was it you who tampered with my medication after Arthur's funeral, making me disoriented for weeks? His silence was all the answer I needed. Behind him, I could see Serafina's room, where she lay connected to various monitors, her earlier bravado replaced by the fear of someone who knew their schemes had finally caught up with them. Detective Mendoza is on her way, Dr. Phillips said quietly. She'll want to take statements from everyone involved. I nodded, feeling a strange, profound sense of calm descend upon me. The truth was finally coming out, and there was no going back. Detective Mendoza arrived within the hour, her presence commanding attention in the sterile hospital corridor. She was a seasoned investigator who specialized in cases involving manipulation and fraud, and she listened intently as I played the recording from brunch and showed her the damning text messages. Mrs. Vance, she said, reviewing her notes, you mentioned previous hospitalizations. Can you tell me more about those incidents? I pulled out my second phone, the one I'd purchased specifically for this purpose, opening a document I'd been meticulously maintaining for months. The first time was in December, after a family holiday dinner hosted by Marcus and Serafina. I had severe stomach pains and dizziness, leading to a missed Christmas charity gala where I was meant to present a design award. The second was in February, the wellness smoothie incident, followed by weeks of debilitating fatigue. Then in April, after the invigorating tonic, resulting in the loss of the hotel bed. My voice remained steady as I continued, each time detailing the dates, symptoms, and circumstances. Each time, the symptoms were similar, but just different enough that the doctors couldn't pinpoint a cause. They'd attribute it to stress, or a virus, or even just my age. The detective's eyes narrowed as she looked at my detailed log. And you've been keeping these records ever since you noticed the pattern? Yes, I confirmed, pulling out a small, discreet voice recorder from my purse. I also started carrying this. I have several recordings where Serafina and Marcus discuss their plans, though they're careful not to be explicit. In one of the recordings, Serafina's voice comes through clearly, the Maxwell account is worth millions, Marcus. We can't let her ruin everything we've worked for. Just stick to the plan, a few days of illness should be enough. And Marcus's response was equally damning, I've got something stronger this time. She won't make it to the presentation. We need to make sure she looks completely incompetent, incapable of managing such a big project alone. Detective Mendoza's expression hardened as she listened. Through the window of Serafina's room, I could see my sister-in-law was now awake, looking significantly less confident than she had at brunch. The hospital is running toxicology screens, the detective informed me. Dr. Phillips has already identified several substances that don't occur naturally. We'll need samples from your home as well, any open containers of coffee, supplements, anything that could have been tampered with. A commotion down the hall caught our attention. Marcus was arguing with the security guards, his voice rising in desperation. I need to speak with my wife, he shouted. Eleanor, please. You don't understand. We were trying to protect you. Detective Mendoza stepped between us. Mr. Davies, you're not helping your case. We've already found evidence of premeditated actions. Premeditated? Marcus laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the corridor. We were just trying to slow her down. She was working herself to death, taking all the major accounts after Arthur passed. Serafina said if we could just make her take some time off, Mr. Davies, Detective Mendoza's voice was sharp, cutting him off. That's not protection. That's attempted murder. The color drained from Marcus's face. Murder? No. That's not, we never meant to. Then what exactly did you mean to do? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm, though my heart was pounding. When you put something in my coffee this morning, what was supposed to happen, Marcus? Marcus's silence spoke volumes. Behind him, I could see Serafina watching through her hospital room window, her face a mask of fear and calculation. I wondered if she was trying to figure out how to spin this, how to explain away months of systematic poisoning as some sort of misguided attempt at helping me. We'll need both of their phones, Detective Mendoza told the security guards. And I want officers posted at both doors. Nobody leaves until we get the toxicology results. Dr. Phillips entered Serafina's room with a tablet in hand, her expression grim as she reviewed the test results. Detective Mendoza and I followed, while Marcus remained outside with the guards. Serafina tried to sit up straighter in her hospital bed, but the tremors hadn't completely subsided. The toxicology report shows elevated levels of several substances, Dr. Phillips announced, her voice clinical. Most concerning is the presence of a particular compound that's typically used in pharmaceutical testing for sedatives and cognitive inhibitors. It's not something the general public should have access to. Serafina's face paled further. That's impossible. Marcus said it was just something to cause mild symptoms. Mild symptoms? Detective Mendoza interrupted, taking out her notebook. Like the ones your sister-in-law experienced over the past 6 months, which you both dismissed as stress or age-related decline? The door opened and another detective entered, holding an evidence bag. We found these in Mr. Davies's home office, at his residence, he reported, presenting several small bottles with clinical labels, along with detailed notes about dosages and observed reactions. I felt my knees weaken as I realized the full, horrifying scope of their plan. You were documenting everything, I whispered, my voice choked, like some kind of experiment. It wasn't like that. Serafina protested, but her voice wavered. We just needed to track what worked. The first few attempts weren't effective enough, you kept showing up to meetings anyway. So you increased the dosages, Detective Mendoza concluded, examining the bottles. Did you know these substances could be lethal in higher concentrations? The room fell silent. Marcus, still visible through the window, sank into a chair in the hallway, his head in his hands, utterly broken. The Maxwell account, I said slowly, pieces clicking into place, forming a monstrous mosaic of betrayal. It wasn't just about that presentation, was it? You needed me out of the way permanently, because the client specifically requested me as their lead designer, and my name was synonymous with Arthur's legacy. Serafina's face contorted with a mixture of anger and fear, her true resentment finally boiling over. You were ruining everything I built. That client portfolio, that prestige for Vance Interiors, it was Arthur's, but it was mine to take over after he died. And then you show up, just getting stronger, and suddenly everyone wants to work with you instead. Marcus said he could fix it, by making you disappear from the scene. The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation, a declaration of intent that chilled me to the bone. We weren't trying to. Serafina started, but Dr. Phillips cut her off, her voice firm. The concentration in the coffee you drank today, Mrs. Davies, the doctor stated, looking directly at Serafina, was significantly higher than previous samples we've analyzed from Mrs. Vance's earlier hospital visits. If she had consumed it, the outcome would have been severe, possibly fatal. Detective Mendoza turned to the other officer. We'll need a full warrant for both their homes and offices, and contact the pharmaceutical company listed on these bottles. Find out how they obtained these substances. Serafina slumped back against her pillows, the last vestiges of fight draining from her face. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus kept saying we just needed one more try. I stepped closer to her bed, my voice steady despite the trembling deep within my soul. Every time I got sick, every meeting I missed, every client I nearly lost, you were both there, watching, taking notes on how your poison was affecting me. What kind of people does that make you? The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, I could hear Marcus being read his rights as additional officers arrived. Serafina stared at her hands, unable to meet my gaze, defeated. Detective, I said, turning away from my sister-in-law, my voice clear and resolute. I'm ready to make my formal statement now. The trial lasted 3 weeks, but it felt like years. I sat in the courtroom each day, watching as the prosecution methodically laid out their case against Marcus and Serafina. The evidence was overwhelming, the bottles from Marcus's office, their detailed notes on each poisoning attempt, the recorded conversations and text messages discussing their nefarious plans. What struck me most was their demeanor throughout the proceedings. Serafina, usually so polished and confident, looked small and hollow in her defendant's chair, her once sharp eyes now vacant with despair. Marcus couldn't even look at me, keeping his eyes fixed on the floor, a picture of broken arrogance, as expert witnesses detailed the potentially lethal effects of the substances they'd been using. Dr. Phillips's testimony was particularly damning. She presented a comprehensive analysis showing how they had gradually increased the dosages over time, demonstrating clear intent to cause serious harm, not just temporary incapacitation. The pharmaceutical company representative confirmed that Marcus, exploiting an old college connection, had stolen the compounds through his friend who worked in their research department, fabricating a story about a personal research project. The defendants showed a calculated, escalating pattern of behavior, the prosecutor argued in her closing statement, her voice ringing with conviction. This wasn't just professional sabotage born of jealousy, it was a systematic, insidious attempt to harm Mrs. Vance, executed with cold precision, with a clear escalation that could have resulted in her death. When the verdict was finally read, I felt no joy, only a profound, weary relief. Both Marcus and Serafina were found guilty on multiple counts, including attempted murder and conspiracy to commit aggravated assault. The judge's words echoed through the silent courtroom, stern and unforgiving. The premeditated nature of these actions, carried out against a family member over an extended period, exploiting her vulnerability and grief, demands the maximum sentence allowable by law. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, their lives, their reputations, their freedom, all sacrificed in a twisted attempt to destroy me. Greed and envy had curdled their hearts, transforming them into something unrecognizable, something truly monstrous. 1 year after the trial, I stood at the podium of the Nashville Business Leaders Conference, preparing to give the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Serafina had tried so desperately to prevent me from achieving, the kind of public recognition that had fueled her bitter envy. The Maxwell account, which she and Marcus had been so desperate to steal, had not only been a resounding success but had also led to several more major clients, firmly establishing Vance Interiors as one of the top design firms in the region, with me at its helm. Success isn't just about talent or hard work, I began, looking out at the sea of faces, a mix of young, eager professionals and seasoned veterans. It's about integrity. It's about building genuine relationships based on trust. And sometimes, I paused, letting my words sink in. The biggest threats to our success, and indeed, to our very lives, come from those closest to us, those we once trusted implicitly. But surviving those challenges, trusting your gut, and refusing to let fear stop you, that makes us stronger. It forges a resilience you never knew you possessed. After my speech, several young professionals approached me, seeking advice. One woman, her eyes bright with determination, asked how I'd maintained my composure throughout the ordeal. I focused on what I could control, I told her, recalling those desperate moments. I gathered evidence, I trusted my instincts, and I refused to let their darkness extinguish my light. I understood that healing wasn't about vengeance, but about reclaiming my peace and rebuilding my life on my own terms. Later that evening, I received an email from the Maxwell client, confirming they were renewing their contract for another 3 years, expressing their profound satisfaction with Vance Interiors. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't trusted that chilling metallic tang, that whisper of dread. That day at brunch, the local paper had run a small article that morning about Marcus and Serafina beginning their prison sentences. I didn't read it. Instead, I focused on the intricate sketches for my newest client project, knowing that the best revenge wasn't about getting even, or dwelling on their fate. It was about moving forward, about building a future defined not by their malice, but by my own unwavering spirit, my integrity, and my boundless passion for life and for beauty. The journey had been harrowing, but I had emerged not only intact, but powerfully, beautifully, unapologetically whole. My heart, once shattered by grief and then betrayed by those I trusted, was now mended, stronger, and more discerning, ready to embrace the promise of tomorrow. If you've ever felt that chilling whisper of doubt, That unsettling feeling that something isn't quite right, I urge you, my dear friends, listen to it. Your intuition is a powerful protector, a silent guardian against hidden dangers. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting your own reality, especially when it comes to your health, your peace, or your future. Share your stories in the comments below, because we are stronger together. Hit that like button if this resonated with you, and please, subscribe to our channel for more tales of resilience, revelation, and redemption. Together, we can find strength, heal wounds, and shine brighter than ever before. Your journey forward, on your terms, is just beginning.